Today is Saturday, the 7th of November, and Elmo is in that vehicle. That's Elmo's mom, and the vehicle is gone. That's the vehicle that's following the one that Elmo is in.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Damlola Okunshaki, and I'm with my
Congress Precious Chukudi. Good to have you, Good to have you here this morning.
Has been very, very good. Yeah. Of course, we've had a lot of things going on and on social media, but I think that time is really meeting us today. So let's just start, with a paper review. I'll be starting the front page of Vanguard, and here we have #EndSARS. A Nigeria Bar Association, that's NBA, Civil Society Organization, CSOs, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, that's SAN, flays federal government's move to try protesters. Federal government trying to silence me by freezing my accounts, says #EndSARS activist. Everyone has right to protest, and that's coming from United Nations. Also, Senate is saying we may not escape another #EndSARS protest if there are 3 dots there. So if you want to know more about that, you can see it on page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper. And moving on to other stories, on page 10, we have doctors, legal officers begin indefinite strike in Ondo. And on page 8, we have Buhari order sale of forfeited assets within 6 months. Senate is saying we aren't aware of CBN freezing #EndSARS leaders' accounts. Northeast elders ask Buhari to sack service chief. And also on page 11, we have YF changes a timetable as exam starts November 30. And on stories above the nameplate, on page 13, IPOB inciting another civil war, that's coming from the Southe-East Govs. And also COVID-19 vaccines 90% effective in phase 3 trial. Nigeria may wait longer to get vaccine, and that's coming from PSN. And lastly, on the front page of Vanguard on page 14, we have Niger governor tests positive for COVID-19, goes into self-isolation. And from the front page of Vanguard newspaper, we'll move straight to the Punch newspaper.
And on the Punch newspaper, we have a main headline: APC convention holds in 2021, a NEC meeting before Christmas. The writer says we didn't envisage enormity of our assignments when we started Buni's panel. It is important we hold convention as United Party, says Deputy Publicity Secretary. Also stories about we have IPPIS, petrol scarcity imminent as Pengasson downs tools. You can see that on page 17. And on page 17 still, we have Naira may fall to 475 against dollar. Rwani says. And on page 6, federal government panel giving 6 months timetable to sell forfeited assets. And stories beneath, we have 3 sentenced to death for armed robbery in Ogun, Ekiti. You can see that on page 6. And lastly, on the front page of the Punch newspaper, we have NYC begins compulsory health insurance, mobilizes 66,000 for orientation. You can see that on page 7. And away from the Punch newspaper, we move straight to this day newspaper.
And on the front page of this day newspaper, we have #SARS protesters, EndSARS protesters demand for justice, good governance legitimate, says United Nations. Comments federal government's quick response to demands, urges government to facilitate security sector reforms, address concerns. Buhari is also saying it's in protesting youth's interest to keep peace. You can get that on the front page of this day. Page 5, we have Buhari directs compulsory health insurance for corps member. Pencom OK's transfer window for pensioners to change PFAs. You can see that on page 8. And lastly, on the front page of this day, we have oil prices jump by 10% over report on COVID-19 vaccines. Trump, Biden, Buhari loud American manufacturer, while World Health Organization, that's WHO, Canada, hail progress. And you can see that on page 8. And from the front page of this day, we move straight to the Nation.
And on the Nation, we have main headline: ignore protesting youth as at your peril. Senate warns. The writer says Buhari urges peace. UN protests falls out of virus pandemic. And COVID-19 vaccine with 90% accuracy set for use. Biden excited. NCDC warns of likely second wave. And visitation panel for varsities, you can see that on page 7. And lastly, on the front page of the Nation, Yakubu steps aside for Muazu at INEC. You can see that on page 7. And that's all we can take on the front page of the Nation newspaper.
And that's all we can take on the front pages of the papers this morning. I'll be going on a short break, and when we return, we'll have a guest to be joining us in the studio. And while we're on the break, you can always leave your opinion or your question for our guest in the comment section. We'll be back.
Today is Saturday, the 7th of November, and Eremo is in that vehicle. That's Eremo's mom, and the vehicle is gone. That's the vehicle that's following the one that Eremo is in.
Alright, welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Today in the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Damilola Okunshaki, and I'm with my co-host,
Precious Chukudi.
And we've reviewed the front pages of some of the papers, and this is the analysis segment where Mr. Dayo Akintobi, the publisher of the Lead Page, will be joining us. Thank you very much for coming. It's always a pleasure to have you with us in the studio. You know, sometimes we've been having you here on Zoom, but I think it's really nice to have you here with us.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's just quickly talk about what is currently going on, and that's based on Garba Shew's interview with Channels today. When they were talking about the current hashtag NSAS protests going on, and the arrest of some of the protesters, and also including a minor, and him saying that hashtag NSAS protesters must face law. What do you think about it? Because we've actually seen many Nigerians' reaction on this.
There has to be a differentiation between a protester and a looter, and I think that's where government is getting it wrong here. They're trying to conflate the two together and say protesters must be made to face the law. Well, the Constitution permits peaceful protest, and even the government itself acknowledged the right of the protesters to be out there peacefully protesting. Now, if that process got hijacked and deteriorated into looting, I think it's the security apparatus that needs to be blamed, because they didn't do enough to protect the protesters and keep it peaceful. We need to make a clear demarcation between a protester and a looter. Protesters have not done anything wrong before the law, unless you can prove specifically that an individual protester was responsible for breakdown of law and order, and you have evidence that he either looted or rioted or damaged, then a protester is a law-abiding objector who is simply saying, we want reform. So you shouldn't just generalize and make a broad-based statement saying protesters will be made to face the law. I don't agree with that.
Okay, now let's talk about the lady, one of the promoters of the NSAS protest, that's Oduala. She's also part of the panel that is supposed to be going on. Due to her now being absent, they've actually postponed the panel sitting for a long time, which we don't know until this frozen account is actually opened. Now, she made a statement that the federal government is trying to silence her. And now with this action and with the statement coming from the presidency, do you think this is actually proven right? And exactly what do you think is the point of the panel if this is actually going to go on?
You look at the body language of the government and the various steps it has taken recently, and you have to question their motivation. Do they really have good faith? Do they really intend to address the grievances of the youth? And the reason we have to start looking at that is because the actions they've taken of late don't speak to the notion of wanting to resolve issues amicably. They've seized the passport and stopped the travel of a lawyer who was involved in offering legal services to some of the protesters. They've frozen the account of 20 different people who are affiliated with the NSAS protest. They've arrested people. There was a young man who was one of the coordinators of the protest that was supposed to happen in Lekki last Saturday. They've arrested him, they moved him from one police station to the next. Now we're hearing he's been taken all the way to Abuja. So when you take in totality all those different actions, it makes you question the genuineness of the government's averment that it would like to reconcile these matters amicably. Now you look at it and you say, the government's action has truncated the sitting of the panel.
Yes.
So that's like it working against itself.
Mm-hmm.
You initiate panels to hear grievances, address concerns, and try to resolve things amicably and compensate those who are hurt. And then you take a step that now truncates the proceedings. It goes to show that a house can't work against itself.
All right, there have been fresh facts that have come out that, the DSS themselves were the one who placed the embargo on these hashtag NSAS protesters, their account. And for them, what they are saying is that some of these protesters were used with or without their knowledge, to attack, to forcefully remove the president from his seat. We've seen the case of Modupe Oladile, known as Mochirios on Twitter, of how she reported that she was supposed to go for her birthday trip in Maldives, and she was stopped. She saw, according to what her report was, that she saw a picture of herself where they declared her wanted, and also, she has not been able to get access to her passport till now. And, this brings a lot of questions to the minds of Nigerians. What exactly is the government all about? Because if you really check it, what the hashtag NSAS protesters did was they brought up 5 demands and said, we want you to meet these demands. And it was not for themselves. It was basically, most of the demands were for even the police themselves. So what exactly is the government trying to do? Really, it looks like they're trying to stifle them and they don't want them to speak.
Well, when you consider the fact that the government acquiesced to those 5 demands, that was the first part of the NSAS protests that gave some measure of how the future would go. As soon as those 5 demands were tabled, the government accepted the 5 demands and actually took concrete steps to implement those 5 steps, including setting up panels, including earmarking money to compensate victims, including disbanding SARS. And so on the surface, the government looked like it had the intent and the will to prosecute the grievances of the protesters. But subsequent actions since then have led us to take pause and question the sincerity of the government in terms of trying to address these grievances. For example, you mentioned the DSS. The DSS is part of the federal government. Yes, its own remit is specific in terms of intelligence, in terms of things like national security issues and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's part of the same security apparatus under which you have the police, under which you have all the other security agencies of the country. And I don't believe the left hand will be working without the right hand knowing. So it's not possible for the DSS to come and say, well, these people, we see them as threats because we have intelligence that tells us that their accounts were used or they were up to no good. Bottom line is, there's an overall picture of dissension from Nigerians in terms of we're dissatisfied with the way things are going and we want to change. Of course, in the process of us articulating our demands, various things have to happen. Different people pay for food and drinks, different people pay for the logistics of the protests. But what you have to look at is, what's the overall intent of the protest? Is to hear the grievance of the people. And so those who made it happen should not be penalized or punished because they supported a peaceful protest. I think the authorities need to separate the issue of protest from the issue of those who broke the law.
All right. The Senate basically said that they are not aware of the accounts being freezed by CBN, and that CBN would definitely have written, the governor of CBN would have written to the lawmaker on the issue. Now, we can see on Twitter, because that's where the hashtag #InSARSProtest started, there's already a trend for it to, a second wave of it to come back. We know what the last one did. We've not gotten over it. A lot of people are still counting their losses, their children, their husbands, people who got killed in the process of all these things, as well as, the hoodlums who looted people's private properties and whatnot. Now, we're seeing that they are trying to come back again because they are angry and they're saying that the government is not doing enough, or they are trying to even make them keep quiet more. How do you think that the situation, if we get into another level of protest, how do you think this situation would be?
We're still devastated by the effects of the first protest, and definitely it's in our best interest to not allow another one to happen, because of course from what we saw from the first one, the level of organization, the number of people who came out, granted a few people are probably gun shy now after the shootings at Lekki and the mayhem, but nonetheless the anger is still there, the deep-seated pain and dissatisfaction with the way things are going in the country. So government needs to be more proactive. They need to show good faith and start taking concrete steps. When you start freezing accounts, when you start prohibiting travel and arresting people willy-nilly, it doesn't inspire confidence in the populace that you genuinely intend to address these issues. Rather, it makes you look repressive, makes you look like an autocratic, repressive regime. And when you look at things like what the special advisor on media to the president said, that, the protesters must be made to face the law, those kind of things don't make us feel comfortable at all. And those are the kind of things that can galvanize the youth into coalescing into another movement or another gathering to air their grievances again, which we want to guard against.
Okay, so during the meeting some days ago, I think they held the meeting, Lagos State government, the monarchs and some other people had the meeting, and of course during the open section of the meeting, the monarchs actually, they clamored for true federalism. They said that each state should be allowed to manage and develop in their own space and with what they have. And compared to the unitary, system of governance now. What I want to ask now, do you think these, just the state developing by themselves will actually work better than this, and need to be able to, solve some of the situations that we currently have on ground?
If we look at history and we look at how Nigeria developed when we were operating a true federalist system, when we were in the regions, and each region was allowed to develop according to its own pace, there was marked progress than when we try to carry the entire country along at the same time. I'll give you an example of Obafemi Awolowo's free education in the Southwest region. When he proffered it, other regions in the country said they couldn't afford it. He said, well, we don't have the money either, but we will find it because we're committed to giving free education. So the rest of the country said, that's up to you, it's your business, go ahead and do it. And he found the money. So Southwest alone went ahead by itself to do free education, and many of our parents are products of that free education scheme. Now, assuming when the rest of the country said, we can't afford it, if they were all one conglomerate or one unitary system, they would have had to jettison that because the entire country couldn't do it. But the fact that one region was able to say, we will make the sacrifices to find the money to fund it, they were allowed to grow at their own pace, and it worked for them. In other regions, there are other examples of other policies that each region developed onto its own that helped its individual progress. So there is some merit to the argument or to the quest for regionalism in terms of each region being able to grow at its own pace. We have precedent to show that that actually works.
Okay, so let's quickly talk about the forfeited assets. So President Muhammadu Buhari, he ordered the sale of forfeited assets within 6 months, and of course, they've created some men there, like 14-man group, to actually follow through with this. Now the question for you is that with this money coming in, after this is sold, what's best way do you think that they can use this money, and where do you think it will actually go for?
The concern, the issue with that has always been, let's not reloot the recovered money.
Yes.
Because in the past we've recovered a lot of money and not been able to account for what happened to it. So I think it's important that not just an executive order saying sell the assets, but there should be a laid out plan for what is going to be done with the money. I've heard them say we're going to build roads. I've heard them say we'll spend it on infrastructure, but that's nebulous. That's quite vague. Let them specifically say how much is recovered from the sale and what are the specific projects they intend to fund, and let it be transparent. Let us see.
All right, let's talk about, the Northern Elders, East Elders have asked the president to sack the service chiefs, and according to them, they are saying that, they are accusing the military of deploying massive strength during the #EndSARS protests and leaving the zone at the mercy of Boko Haram. What do you think about what they're saying? Because, this, sack the service chiefs, I'm sure you've heard it a long time. We've been hearing it like frequently, sack the service chiefs, and now they are accusing, the service chiefs of allowing the military takeover during the, #EndSARS protest. What do you think about it?
Boko Haram has defied all solution up to this point, and I don't think a ragtag army should be able to best a organized military, a country's military force. We saw the army and the police, we saw how effective they can be when they want to put down an insurrection. Yeah. We saw them at EndSARS. They came out and they performed negatively nonetheless, but they came out and they performed. That degree of passion, commitment, and performance that they put to EndSARS, what stops it from being put to address Boko Haram as well? I think the issue is Boko Haram has been too long. Terrorism, banditry, herdsmen attacks, all those things have defied solution to the point where people are tired and they're saying no. Look, buck stops at the person responsible, and we've had this for so long and they've not found a solution. So maybe it's time to change these service chiefs for the Northern Elders to start saying you made a tactical error because you pulled all your men out to EndSARS protests and left us vulnerable to where Boko Haram now intensified attacks on us because we were not defended. So for the Northern Elders to be saying it, I mean, we've been hearing it everywhere else, but for direct victims now of bad strategy to now be coming out and clamoring, I think government needs to look at it seriously.
Okay, so you think that they really exhausted all applicable ideas that you have?
I even right here on this show in the past, I've advocated the fact that let's give the presidency and the executive the opportunity, because they probably have some internal information that we don't know about. That there's got to be a reason they're keeping the service chiefs. They probably have some degree of confidence, or they know some intelligence that is not available to the public. But I said that 6 months, a year ago, and here we are now still addressing those same issues. So I think they've outlived their welcome, and government should really seriously look at reshuffling the entire security apparatus. It's much more than just the service chiefs. There's a whole lot more, including budgets, logistics, equipment. Okay, America under Donald Trump agreed to sell us some fighter jets. Where are the fighter jets? How soon can we deploy them? Training for pilots and things like that. Let's revamp the whole security apparatus, and let's see if we can't put Boko Haram and terrorism down once and for all. The country is tired.
Okay, let's quickly talk about COVID-19 cases increasing right now in Nigeria. I think there was a time we actually recorded like 10 cases a day, 5 cases a day, and right now we're we just recently recorded 94 cases just a day, even including the Niger State governor who tested positive, to COVID recently. Now, what I want to ask you now, what do you think is actually causing this increase in COVID-19? And it has really affected a lot of things. And what other way do you think now this will still affect us with other things that we are still solving, like the hashtag #EndSARS protesters, after effects and all that?
We got complacent with COVID because we got very, look at how, you go on the street, you don't see anybody with a face mask anymore.
Yes.
There's not much social distancing being respected. We got lucky and we dodged the bullet. 60,000 infections out of 200 million people is an infinitesimal fraction compared to what's happening around the world. So we got comfortable and got relaxed and said, well, COVID is not an issue for us, no big deal. Well, it is a big deal and it is very real. 2 days ago, they had 300 infections, 255 in Lagos alone, and numbers are rising again. That's why NCDC is warning that there's an imminent second wave coming, and they are giving us enough warning so that we can take the necessary preventive measures. The security protocols are still in place. Don't go out if you don't have to, work from home if you can, wear your face mask at all times, social distance, keep your immunity up. All those things are still very, very valid. But the good news is, yesterday Pfizer announced discovery of a vaccine that seems to confer protection up to about 90% on people against this COVID virus. Well, it's still going through trials and still needs regulatory approval and all that, but it is a bright light on the horizon that gives hope, because once we have a vaccine that confers protection on us, we can carry on our lives as normal without having to worry too much about the spread of the infection. So vaccine is key, and the fact that they've made significant progress on the development of the vaccine gives a lot of hope for the future.
All right, you just mentioned the Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine, and everybody's excited about it, that we found a sort of breakthrough to an extent. And as a result of that, there are also reports that Nigerians might wait a little longer to access the vaccine because since the federal government basically didn't, they failed to make like any financial commitments to companies working on various vaccines. What do you think about that kind of situation? Because apparently different countries are finding ways on how they could provide the vaccine, and the federal government said, okay, we're looking towards it, and there were no financial commitment. They were just stalling. What do you think about it?
First thing we should remember is that Pfizer and those who developed this drug, this vaccine, they are private companies, they are businesses. They spent a lot of money on research and development and trying to invent this vaccine. So they have to recoup their money. So they are not in the business of charity. They are not giving out the vaccine for free. Vaccine is going to be sold. Granted, many countries will pay for it for their citizens. But there's an issue of today, the 6 billion people in the world need the vaccine today, but they cannot produce 6 billion doses in one day. So there's going to be a distribution protocol, which is an ethical issue. Who gets it first, who gets it last? How do you prioritize? How do you charge people? Does the country pay for it? Does the individual healthcare sector pay for it? What continents get it first? Do you give elderly people first? Do you give healthcare workers first? Do you give the vulnerable first? Those who can't afford to pay for it, how do they get it? So there's a major ethical issue with how do we distribute the vaccine after it is approved and put on the market.
All right, we'll take some comments, and this one is from Oshunde Otutu Kendi. Says, in Buhari's Nigeria, every youth is under siege. I think he's responding to the hashtag #EndSARS protest. And somebody else is also asking, that's El Hussein. He says, which protest again? I'm sure Nigerians are not basically ready for the protest. That's all I can take on the page.
Okay, thank you very much, and it's lovely having you with us in the studio. And that's all we have for you, on today in the news. You can always like and share, follow us on our social media platforms showing on your screen, or visit our website www.vanguardngr.com. Meanwhile, of course, we'll be discussing with Mr. Dayo Akintobi of Ilupeji today. Thanks for sharing your thoughts with us.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Okay, and of course, I'm Damilola Okunshaki, and I'm being with my co-host
Precious Chukudi. Thank you for watching,
and enjoy your day.